Episode 5, eh? What a time to be alive. I feel like the months are just going by like that because it was genuinely about 2 minutes ago that I recorded episode 4 and I have so much to show you. So much has moved on. I'm also at this point thinking whether I'm going to close the blinds or not, by which I mean my curtains. The sun keeps kind of going in and out. It's like early dusk on Sunday here in London, so we might have to deal with me squinting like this for the whole time. So bear with that and bear with the changing lighting. I'm sure it'll resolve itself. Okay, let's start with what I'm wearing. This is something that I've talked about on the previous episode. So this is the Knitty Committee top. It was a test knit that I did for Lily Kate France. And this is its official first wear, I would say. I put it on to take some pictures when the launch happened, maybe like 2 weeks ago. But this is the first time that I'm wearing it of a day because I wanted it to be nice and fresh for recording this. So I hope you feel special. It was quite a fraught test knit for me. So my last update was me getting extremely distraught about having somehow managed to cast on 10 fewer stitches than the pattern called for in my size, and then having to take back a piece that I'd knit up that was alternating skeins. So it was like 2 individual strands, and then I'd cut the yarn as well. Bafflingly, I had cut the yarn without even checking that the stitches were right at the end. So I ended up having loads and loads of tiny little balls of it and then working those through in the top. And I think you can kind of see that as it is. So you can probably see, and I think this is more obvious in the pictures that I took, that there is quite a lot of variation within the skeins. I used 2, and when I came to do the tiny little sleeves, I was on the second skein, and in real life you can see that there is quite a big difference between the colour on this sleeve versus in the body. And also you can see where the bust shaping is happening. Sorry to direct your gaze to this particular area, but where the bust shaping is happening, you can really see the curvature of the knit. And I think that that looks excellent. I really enjoy that you can see the kind of architecture of it, but it's quite subtle. So if you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't need to know. I said that this was quite fraught. I finished this, I think, 4 a.m. the day after it was due. So when the test knit closed was like midnight, and then I finished it at 4 a.m. And at 4, I finished the knitting, I bound off, I blocked it, filled out the form, went to sleep, and then the next day I took some pictures for the launch date, which was the day after the test knit was done. And basically, because I was a bit late, I didn't make the cut of like the roundup pictures that were shared, and I was like, I was so gutted because I put in all of that work to try and finish it as close as possible to the deadline, and then I would just, at the time, like, obviously it was just a bit too late. And also, one other thing that really kind of gutted me was like, if you finished it, then you got a couple of the designer's patterns for free, and again, I didn't make that cut, which is a shame because I really, really wanted to make the chapter cushion, which I've had my eye on for absolutely ages. But it's not a problem. I will just buy that pattern at some point in the future and knit that up. See, here we go. The sun keeps coming out from behind clouds, and whilst I don't begrudge the sun her moment, I also wish she would pick her moments better. Sassy to the sun. I can't do the whole podcast like this. That's ridiculous, isn't it? No, I can't do that. Regardless, what a nice top, eh? I feel very slinky in it. I feel very fishy. It's so soft. This is, I've mentioned this before on the channel, it's 100% pure silk. It's by Yarn Tings. The colorway is Nevermore. And I think that, so I mentioned that it was very fine and that it was starting to kind of fuzz and haze. This is not a forgiving yarn, in my personal opinion. One of the reasons I think you can tell that it's not particularly forgiving is in this pattern. So if I kind of come up a bit closer to the camera and I'll show you. One of the nice features of this pattern is that it has these kind of feature decreases down the side. And those, I might put a picture up here, which is a bit closer detail, but they're kind of little dip stitches almost as the increase is happening. So you've got these beautiful little loops that make the increases and the decreases just a part of the pattern and another fun element, design element, rather than something that's just done to make the whole thing bigger. And there's also on the sleeve this interesting ribbing, which is like a 2x2 and then a switch to a 1x1 rib. So these are some quite like fun parts, I think, of this pattern. Reasons why I quite liked it. And this yarn is so soft and dramatic. She's very much like, you know, she's pure silk, she's old money, she does not care at all what other people think. If somebody says like go and do something, it just, like if this yarn was a person, it would be Daisy Buchanan, you know, you would be saying like, Daisy, hold yourself up high, and she'd be like, no Jay, I simply can't. So she just shows absolutely every single possible mistake that you could possibly ever make. And I like to think that when I'm taking good care, I'm quite a uniform knitter and my stitches look quite good. You know, there's certainly knits that I've done where I just plow on and I don't really care about it and I'm like, oh, it's fine if I've dropped a stitch there or whatever. Like, you know, ultimately only I'm going to be the one who's going to notice. But with this one, I poured a lot of care into it, and you can definitely tell, I can definitely see where I've made mistakes and where things don't look quite so neat. This yarn does not take prisoners. She will expose all of your flaws. But she is so soft. I think that this might actually be, I said it was silk, I think it might be brushed silk. I was going to do some research on that before I started talking in this video, but I haven't done that. I have just said what I've said. I think it's brushed silk, which means that it's very, very, like it's very, very fine. And as I was knitting it, I had to be careful not to just split it in half. So I was focusing, I was white knuckling this bad boy. I was in for the ride, you know. I used every single scrap of this yarn. I am actually going to draw the curtains. I'm sorry. Okay, that feels a little bit better. It is so hot though. I'm having a peach cold brew today out of the nice glasses. We only have 2 of these left. I broke one and my partner broke the other. And obviously the one that I broke was the most precious one. So I think it was brushed silk. I used every last scrap of it. So here is the sum total of what is left. Just this. I used right up to the wire of this, so much so that the hem, you probably won't be able to tell, but the hem is slightly shorter than it's supposed to be. There are only a couple of rows of that 1x1 rib that's on all of the other ends, on the arms and as well on the neck. But there's only 1 or 2 of those sorts of rows of the hem. I don't think it's very noticeable. And I think the length is maybe slightly on the shorter side for what I would have wanted, but definitely not so much that I feel uncomfortable. So I'm quite happy with it as it stands. I'm really not sure how much wear it's going to get because, as I said, it feels so precious to me. It feels like a fancy night out sort of knit. And I think it's the sort of thing that people are not going to look at instantly and be like, wow, that is an expensive item of clothing. But yarn alone on this was £70 in total, which makes it a very expensive top in my book. And then obviously you add on the labour, everything else. It is an expensive top. There's kind of no way around it. I think if I wear it with like a slinky sort of skirt, then people will recognise it for the classy item that it is. I really want to see how the yarn is going to hold up, so I'll give you an update on that in the future if you will permit me. But hey, I'm wearing another finished object. Where could it be? Where is it? Where is the other finished object? Bear with. Yeah! Woo! These are my Luftikus Socks. God knows whether they're centered on the camera. I can't see anything. That's enough now. It's quite enough nonsense for one podcast. My Luftikus Socks are, I will actually take these off so I can show you. These are just awesome. I am so happy with them. Here we go. When I showed these before last time, I said that I was on the verge of doing like a little sock puppet thing. And you have once again escaped that bullet because I really wanted to do it just now as a callback. But yeah, no, you're safe this time round. But I'm going to be knitting a lot more socks, so there will always be a risk on this podcast that you will see a sock puppet impression. Maybe I should do a sort of online class or something to make it work. These socks are knit in Zakami 100% Corridale. The colorway, I actually don't know the exact colorway, but this was a yarn that I got for being part of the Woolly Good gathering a year ago, by which I mean they did a kind of GoFundMe, and this was part of the package that you got if you sponsored a certain amount. The Woolly Good gathering is a yarn festival in Edinburgh. I didn't go this year. I just couldn't justify it going up to Edinburgh, but I was a bit gutted to miss out on it. It looked really fun. So maybe next year I will make an appearance, and if you're there, please come and say hi. These socks are, first off, I knit them up so quickly. I was just addicted to making them. I really enjoyed making both of these. And both of these. I nearly said I had 3 finished objects because I was counting each sock as a separate finished object, which I feel is justified. I have no problems with how I stand on that. Just as a sidebar, I downloaded an app called, I think it's called Indyx, but with a Y instead of an E. This is obviously not sponsored because, like, can you imagine? Lol. But I have been really enjoying using it. Effectively, you catalogue all of your items of clothing, and then you can put together outfits, and then you can put on your calendar what outfits and what items you wore on what day. And then it gives you lots of delicious, juicy stats about your wardrobe. And there have been some things that surprised me. So the proportion of my wardrobe that is handmade, hand knitted or hand crocheted, was about 16%, which is lower than I thought it would be. I did think it would be a bit higher than that. Anyway, this is a bit of a sidebar. If you're interested in more of that, maybe I'll do a bit more, once I've got some more data, then I'll do maybe a video on that, focusing on my handmade parts of the wardrobe and what I wear it with and how I style that. But relevant to this is that since records began, the Luftikus Socks have been my #1 worn handmade item. I think I've worn these like 5 times. I have mostly worn these, and this is probably a cardinal sin, with my Birkenstocks. Yes, I am a socks and sandals wearer. It's deviant. I know it's deviant. Lady Gaga once said, "Sue me, I love a good pump," which I have just realised may not have been about shoes. I think it was about shoes. I think she was talking about pumps, the shoes. But regardless, sue me, I love a good Birkenstocks moment. So that's how I've been wearing these mostly. And I think also, if you have spent ages making a pair of socks that you like, I want them to be a little bit on display. And I think that's where the sandals come into play. Yeah, I know, I'm justifying evil behavior, but I don't care. I want people to see that I've made these socks. I want people to admire them as much as I admire them. I don't think there is anything else to say about these socks. No, wait, there is one final thing. I meant to say this last time and I forgot. They're called Luftikus. They are by the designer Ducati, I think is her handle. Katarina, I think is her name. And Luftikus, according to the pattern page, is a happy-go-lucky sort of guy, which I thought was fitting because that's what I want to be, is a happy-go-lucky guy. And maybe one day when I'm wearing these, I will realise that dream. So yeah, 3 finished objects. I'm justifying. I think you can. I think it's fair to count socks as 2 finished objects. Otherwise, why do we do them? They're so fun. That's why we do them. I've got some updates on some things. Yeah, it's whip time. Let's do it. What are we going to go for first? Why am I struggling so much on this? Okay, the first thing that I'm going to give an update on, and I've decided to do this on the basis of oldest whip, it's time for a Lanark update. I can't remember if I brought Lanark out last time that I did a podcast. I have this feeling that I didn't. Lanark featured in my first ever podcast. OGs might remember that I cast Lanark on the Lanark Sweater by the Crochet, Rebecca Clow of the Crochet. I cast Lanark on as a sort of New Year's treat to myself, and I used a cone from the new Lanark spinning mills, which was 90% wool and 10% silk. It's a DK weight, that yarn, and I had 500 grams in that cone. And where is that cone now? Show me the cone now. She's gone. So I used up all of it. I used up every last little scrap. That's not 100% true, actually. Yeah, I didn't undo the swatch. I did think for a while that I would undo this swatch if it got really close to the wire and I needed to do that, but I didn't do that this time around. What I did do was I bought some more yarn from New Lanark Spinning Mills, and that yarn, it wasn't possible to get the exact same thing. And I knew that what I was going to be getting was not going to be the same because what I bought was 100% wool rather than the 90% wool, 10% silk, as I just said. But I'm going to show you what the new versus the old looks like. And I really hope this will be clear enough on camera. So this is Lanark. You can see that she is very close to being finished. And here's the difference. So apologies, because this is inside out. You can knit this both the right way or you could knit it the wrong way, but I decided to knit it the wrong way, and that is why it is inside out right now. It has this cuff that I'm holding here, which ends about here, my fingers. That is all in the new wool, versus all the rest of this being in the original from the cone. So on camera you can see it, I think, a little bit. In real life, I think you can see it under certain light, and I obviously know that it's different, but it is really, really close. It's really similar. Do you know what? I just looked at this and it says 90% pure new wool, 10% silk. Mate. This is definitely not going to show up on camera, but I bought two balls like this. And genuinely they're different colours. You're seeing me this, like, you're seeing me realise this in real time, that I think they sent me a ball of the original type that I'd been knitting that cone with, because it is a different colour. There's no way you're going to be able to see that on camera. It is a different colour from the one that I just finished off the ribbing and the hem with. And it is very, very close. I would say it's actually indistinguishable. It is indistinguishable. This whole time, I could have finished it off in exactly the same colour. That does make me feel slightly less happy with this colour match. That is so unfortunate, isn't it? What are the chances that that would happen? Mate. Well, that's the new question, isn't it? Do I undo the cuffs? Do I undo the cuffs in order to get an all-over matching Lanark? Or do I just say I was happy with it before and I'm happy with it now? I actually don't know. I actually don't know. Why do these things happen to nice people? Happy-go-lucky guys like me. All right. Here's the other thing. So I finished the knitting for this. So if I was to go back, that would be kind of annoying. You can see that the cable is still in here at the bottom, and that's because I'm doing the tubular bind off. And what I thought that I would do whilst I was here and doing the tubular bind off is to share something that when I learnt it probably saved me 10 million years. Some people will hear this and then think, obviously, that's obviously true. But for anyone who is dumb like me, dumb enough to, out of the two balls of yarn, to pick the one that looked the least like the one, never mind, I'm over it, it's fine. I'm not over it. I'm really tempted to just burn this. Might just burn the whole thing. Burn the whole thing down. Yeah. Right. I'm going to share this tip. So a tubular bind off has 4 steps to it. And those 4 steps translate to, at least when I do it, or when I was originally doing it, those 4 steps translate to 5 movements. And the 4 steps are, starting with a knit, you knit off the needle, then you purl the second stitch, which is then also a knit, keep it on the needle, obviously. Then you purl the first stitch off the needle, and then you knit the first stitch coming from the back of the work. So that last step is 2 movements for me. You go between the 2 stitches that are left on the needle and then through to knit that second stitch. I saw somebody doing it as 2 movements, and I now do it as 3 movements. So what I mean by that is that I will put this might be easier if I put a little video up on the side, so if I can be bothered, I'll do that. But I put my needle in to the first knit stitch, let it off on my on my tapestry needle. Then I go in to the second stitch, and that puts those first two steps as one movement. And that might sound kind of trivial. I'm sure loads of people have already seen that that's possible to do. But when you've got super long tail of yarn, because you're going around a whole hem, it actually does save an absolutely massive amount of time. Then on the second two steps, what I originally saw somebody doing was to, just like last time, to go in as a purl and then pull the purl stitch off, just as you would, and then to go through the two next stitches, and then they kind of wrangled through to then knit that second stitch, and again they pulled the yarn through at that point. So that person had turned what originally for me was 5 movements into 2 movements, and I now do it basically as three movements, which is, as I said, knit off, purl on together, pull the yarn through, and then purl on through the 2 stitches as one movement, and then I do a third movement, which is just doing the knit. And that's because I found that I was spending quite a lot of time kind of going in and out there to try and make it into one movement, which actually wasn't making a big time saving. Anyway, if there's at least one person watching for whom that saves a whole bunch of time, then I am very pleased to have shared that, because it is not something I originally thought of doing. And I am very grateful for it when I'm casting off 200 stitches or whatever it is. I did see online somebody say that tubular bind off was not something that they tended to do around a neckline. And actually, when I was knitting this top, I didn't do a tubular bind off around here. I did another form of stretchy bind off just on the needle. I can't remember the exact name. But I thought actually that's what I'm going to do in the future, because I think the tubular bind off gives it way too much gap. And I feel like I've complained about this before, that I really don't like when there's a sort of a big boat neck on a knitted top, especially if it's not something that I have planned for. I think it doesn't suit me. I feel like I have broad shoulders. Maybe that's an insane thing to say, but I just don't like having too much of a neckline, because I think it just stretches you out, and it doesn't, I don't like that look for me. So, and also I think it makes it feel quite loose and like baggy, and I tend to prefer knitted, fitted garments that I've made. I'm not going to be able to get over the fact that I could have had a fully matching Lanark. That segment also kind of strays into acquisitions, because I obviously have 200 grams more of yarn that I told myself I probably wouldn't get this year. And I definitely am going to have like 160 grams of DK weight yarn left over from Lanark, which is a bit more than I would have hoped to have. And I don't have a good idea for what I'm going to make with that. This is very rustic feeling wool. It's perfect for making a jumper like that. I'm going to need to have a bit of a think about what the best thing to do with that remaining yarn is. And that is part of the problem with having a stash, is that you kind of create these, I feel like sometimes you create these problems for yourself in what you've got left over. But on the whole, probably better to have 160 odd grams of yarn than to have like just 60. So we'll see what that turns out to be. The next whip, oh my god, the next whip is actually really exciting. I think it looks amazing. So, having finished the Luftikus socks, my new ambition, goal, is to always have a pair of socks on the go. And this is a pair of socks that I mentioned in my last video, which is the ones that I'm making for my dad. But it's a bit of a spoiler. I really doubt that my dad is watching. But if you are my dad, I am sorry for spoiling the surprise. We don't want it further spoiled. then go off and start making some beer or something. Or go off and do some training, because you should probably be training, because this is to celebrate my dad doing a half Ironman in June. A half Ironman, for anybody who doesn't know, is a absolutely insane feat of mental endurance, mental and physical endurance. It is a triathlon event, and I can't remember all of the distances, but they all add up to, I think, 70.3 miles, I want to say. It's a long way, whatever it is. So I'm making this pair of socks out of yarn that I bought, and I talked about in my last video. I bought this from the Stephen and Penelope store in Amsterdam. I went just before they closed their old store, but I understand they have now opened their new one. And my sister, who lives in the Netherlands, went there, and she says it's massive, that it is absolutely massive. So if you have means to get to Amsterdam and you have not yet gone to the Stephen and Penelope store, apparently it is well worth a visit. I bought these sock yarns on discount because they were getting rid of stuff before they moved. So they are from Walk. They are hand dyed, and I bought 3 individual sock minis, which I showed last time, and my sister bought the exact same 3 sock minis, because what we are doing is, as part of the gift, I am knitting one of the socks and she is knitting the other. And yeah, I'll just show you it, and then I'll explain a little bit about how we kind of got to this. So this is my one sock, and you can see the 3 colors in this. So the color names, the darkest one, this dark brown, is called Ebony. The middle color is called Propolis, and the lightest color is called Antique Gold. They obviously, I think, look excellent together. This symbol here is the Iron Man M. To make this, I am using the I'm So Basic pattern from Summerlee Knits, I'm So Basic Socks, which is a vanilla sock pattern, and it's quite straightforward. If you are used to knitting socks, it just has this rib up at the top, and then in the original pattern you just have one colour that would go down, and then she has a version which has a different colour for the heel and a different colour for the toe. So we used that as the sort of base, and then I charted up in Excel. People will say that there are tools online to do this, to make good charts, and yes, there are. I used 1 or 2, I got really annoyed, and then I retreated to the comforting safety blanket of Excel, Microsoft Excel, where I thrive and where I live and where nothing can hurt me, and where, when civilization finally collapses and there is no more Microsoft Excel, I know that my value to this world will be complete. That's all I'm good for. And Google Sheets, obviously. So I charted this up in Excel, and then I felt very pleased with myself because I sized the rows and the columns according to the gauge that we needed for the pattern, so that it wouldn't distort the image once it got onto the sock. And I did think that I would share that chart, but whilst I was researching the Iron Man symbol, I came across the Iron Man trademark agreement or trademark policy online, and it is so intense. They said you can't make t-shirts with the Iron Man logo on it, even if it's just for you and your group of friends. And if you write a book on Iron Man, you need specific approval. So yeah, please don't come for me. I'm just making a sock for my dad. I'm just a girl. And I shared it with my sister so that we could do the same thing. But yeah, I'm too afraid of the people online to share that chart. But I will tell you that it was super, super simple to do. One of the other good things about the pattern, the Summerly Knits one, is that it's a free pattern for making a sock, which is great because I would have probably felt a bit uncomfortable with buying a pattern for a sock and then sharing it with my sister so that there's only one purchase, even though we're only making one pair of socks. Like, maybe that's a bit intense of me to feel guilty about that, but I probably would have felt a little bit guilty. So it's nice that it was just freely available. The heel making method is to do this kind of heel flap and gusset. I don't know what the technical term is. Every time I've made a pair of socks, it's either been this method or it's been a short row heel. That was what the Luftikus socks were a short row heel. And I think I prefer doing a short row heel. And the one thing about the I'm So Basic socks is that when you come to the heel bit, I was kind of looking at it like, oh, I thought it was a flap and whatever, because I've seen that, how that looks before. And then just the way that it was written kind of looked like it was short rows. And I had to look at it and be like, oh no, there's a bit sort of missing where she says, do this section, repeat to the end. So that's just a one little warning if you are thinking about making your first pair of socks and then you decide to go and look at that pattern. It is good, it's a good pattern, but just kind of be aware of that when you come to the heel flap, that there's a bit in square brackets that you just need to repeat that to the end of the row. So read that quite carefully. Otherwise, it's been really good to follow so far, and she's got like a lot of videos, and to be fair, I didn't watch the video, so maybe it's a bit clearer in that. But yeah, if you are a first time sock maker, go ahead and do that. Anyway, I honestly think this looks so cool. I've been wanting to share loads of pictures of it and stuff on Instagram, but I am trying to keep this a secret from my dad until he gets it at the end of June, and I really hope that he loves it. And I hope that when he comes to get one that is made by me and one that's made by my sister, that he can look past the obvious inconsistencies between the two socks and love the fact that it's a gift from his two knitting daughters. We have another sister, so she's just there for moral support. The thing about making a pair of socks with my sister, and she is a experienced knitter, but she has not made a pair of socks before, so we're doing a lot of communicating, and it makes me realize how hard it must be to actually write a pattern, because I am sitting saying do this, and I'm maybe using slight shorthand, and then it's getting lost in translation, it's getting a bit confused. And also I was trying to figure out how many repeats of this pattern we wanted before we got to the toe. So I was doing some like wild mathematics, absolutely wild, just to try and figure out how long the leg needs to be before we go into the heel, before we go into the length of the foot, so that we get the number of repeats of the pattern that we want. And I think I've got it, but as we've established in this very episode and in the past, I am a very flawed human being who will make mistakes, and who has made mistakes, and who may make mistakes in the future. But I really hope that this is not one of those mistakes. That would be very annoying for me. I'm actually quite jealous that I don't get to make the next sock. It's like the reverse of second sock syndrome, isn't it? I want to make the second sock. I just want what I can't have. That's my issue. I'm really curious as well to see which of these 3 balls I'm going to use the most of. I think it will probably be the amber propolis, because that will be the toe and the heel, and obviously it's in the pattern repeat as well. But maybe it will be the ebony, because that will be throughout the whole sock. We'll wait and see. Keeping you all on tenterhooks for the next episode. And that's it for whips. I think there's a couple more things that I want to talk about. So I haven't traditionally done a what should I be casting on in the future segment to the podcast. I've always had sort of 3 or 4 whips on the go, and I think Lanark is going to be very, very close to being done. It will need a bit of sewing and a zip put in, but I'll probably wait on that for a while because it's coming into the hot months, so I don't think it's going to be something that I'm going to get to wear until 3 or 4 months' time. And that will then mean that I don't have a big project. I did a video recently, which was various summer knits that I want to try or want to do. So I think I'll probably pick my next big project from one of those patterns that I shared in the video. And if you haven't seen the video, I will also link it somewhere here so you can check that out if you are interested. But the other contender for my next big project is something from a set of acquisitions that I want to show you. I bought these in a charity shop in Blackpool, which I felt was honestly an amazing find. There was a huge basket of all of these vintage patterns and I spent ages pouring through them. So I'm not going to go through every single one of them because I bought, I think, 14 little booklets, some of which have multiple patterns in. But I'm going to show 1 or 2 contenders for things that I thought I might actually knit up. And in my head as well, I thought this might be quite a good standalone video to knit a vintage pattern and talk about how that goes. So if you're interested in seeing one of those being knit up, then let me know. I posted a little short just showing the front covers of all of these, and some of them are honestly amazing. Like this one. She is so chic. And then there's this. These Milan Tricot ones are quite glamorous looking to me. And then there's a couple of really bold sort of colour worky ones. Allah. This is, for me, it's Back to the Future. There's probably a couple of things that have stood out to me just from flicking through these patterns, and the first most obvious one is the massive difference in range of sizes available from patterns. So just picking one as an example, this one, which I thought was actually relatively modern looking and quite attractive, I have to say. I have just noticed it's got some sort of like gold fringe. But you don't have to have that. Or maybe you do. This evening jacket goes up to a 44-inch bust. Actually, sorry, that's the actual measurement of the garment. So that's 4 inches of positive ease. So that's 40 inches around the bust. So that means that I would be the second largest size on this. And in the past, my body has changed a little bit in the past year or so. I would used to have to knit to a 40-inch bust. So I would have been just able to make this pattern. And that was actually something that I didn't think about explicitly until I was looking through the patterns after I bought them. They were all super cheap. So, you know, they were like 10p each. So it might not have been the greatest loss. I think a lot of the fun of this for me is it's the picture, and I kind of thought about framing a couple of them that would be sweet rather than actually making every single one of these. And also just for the interest of looking at how things used to be written. But yeah, I was looking through this and I was like, wow, I am just on the edge of being able to make this, and what a huge improvement and change to the inclusivity of patterns that I didn't even think about needing to check that. I have in the past been burned by this before because there was one specific top that I bought the pattern for without thinking, and then when I looked at it, I was too big for the biggest size, and that was quite surprising because I am not one who traditionally struggles to be served in mainstream shops. I recognise that I'm quite fortunate in that way. So I have never, I think, experienced being cut out of sizing until I bought that pattern years ago. And I had to modify it to make it large enough for me, which was kind of insane. So yeah, big caveat with these vintage patterns is that they wouldn't be suitable for a fairly significant and important part of our knitting community. I wasn't sure, actually, having bought these, about the kind of ethics of buying them. Because they were secondhand, it's not as if you're necessarily encouraging people to continue with practices that are exclusive. There's not going to be a designer out there that thinks that they're behaving in a way that's in line with what the community demands. So, and because they're vintage, that's maybe part and parcel of it. But yeah, I didn't want to not say that. The other thing that I noticed about these patterns, and this is maybe a bit less serious, is that this is a bit more on the light-hearted side, I would say. But absolutely tons of them use mohair. Just like absolutely loads of them have this kind of fuzz around the outside of them. One sec. I just had to go and let my cat in, and I just know that she is going to want to be let out in just 1 second. Yeah, she's circling. She's staring me down. Maybe not. We'll see if she'll hold to the end of the episode. I was saying loads of them are made out of mohair. Loads of them call for mohair, either to be made in like 3 or 4 strands of it or to have the mohair alongside. And they all are very specific around, you need to use this yarn and we will not be held liable if you don't use this yarn. So it's a lot less like, here's a whole bunch of different yarns that you could potentially use of different price ranges, and they give slightly different effects. Right, I'm going to show you one that I really, really want to make. And you can tell me if you think that my taste is just absolutely nuts. But I want to make this one here. This numbers jumper. I probably wouldn't do what she's done, which is to have a contrast sleeve. And I probably wouldn't do it in black and white. And I probably wouldn't wear this specific buff neck warmer. I don't know if anybody outside of Scotland calls it a buff, but you know, one of those, I guess it's a cowl, a sort of, it looks like a fleecy, flannelly cowl. So that is certainly a choice, but I do love the idea of making like a big numbers one. So that's my potential contender for the next cast on. And if you would be interested in a video from start to finish of me knitting a vintage pattern with a whole bunch of numbers on it, probably not in mohair, then yeah, give me a heads up and I will do that. I'll probably do it anyway, but I'll do it faster if I get the external validation. As another potential new cast on this year, there are about 10 million new babies from people that I care very deeply about. So I would really love to hear any great little baby patterns that you recommend. I have a couple, but I'm a little bit tired of making little booties. And I also have this sneaking suspicion that parents don't like them because I think they must be super easy for kids to just kick off, babies to just kick off, and then they're lost forever. I think little rompers are adorable, and I was also thinking about making some little hats. So those might be next on my needles. But for now, I'm slightly whipless. So the next thing that you see will be hopefully a complete surprise. Tell me what you're knitting on. I would love to hear. Is everybody working on summer knits right now? Are you doing little summer t-shirts? Or are you also doing socks? Or are you saving yourself for winter? You know, maybe it's just too hot to be knitting where you are right now. Maybe you're somewhere completely different. Maybe it's perfect knitting season and maybe you're in the midst of your winter. Yeah, let me know what's on your needles. If you liked this video, then I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like. And also, if you want to see a bit more, then you can follow along by subscribing. And I will see you soon.